Welcome to the FuturePrint Sustainability Podcast. And today we're going to look at sustainability within print. And my name is Steve Lister. I'm the founder of stevelister.com, and we're a consultancy that looks after global brands, retailers, and supply chain partners on their journey on sustainability. But today is going to be really exciting because I've got three real experts who are going to take us on that sustainability journey. And we're going to unpack sort of like 5 key areas when it comes to sustainability in print. So first of all, I'd like to sort of like get everyone to do an introduction. So what I would like you to do is if you could tell me your name, your role within your companies, and a little bit about your sustainability journey that you've been on. And then what we'll then do is we'll jump into some of the questions and go a little bit deeper into sustainability within print.
Sure.
Yeah, start with you. Yeah, let's go for it.
I'm Barbara Chaplain. I'm a Product and Packaging Sustainability Director at Cimpress. So Cimpress is a global company focused on mass customization in print. And in my role, I support all of our businesses globally into making our product and packaging a little bit better every day. And that is around carbon footprint, plastics, and forestry minerals.
Tough job.
Busy one.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing more. And Carlos.
So I'm Carlos Lahoz. I work in HP. And I'm responsible for the sustainability strategy of the industrial print business. I've been in sustainability for more than 15 years in different roles, from R&D, but also marketing, and now in the strategy team. And yeah, it's a topic that I'm passionate about and happy to share today.
Great stuff. Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you. So my name's Liz Smith. I work for INX Europe, so part of INX International and Sakata INX Group. I am the ESG Director for the European sites, so that covers sites in Spain, Czech, Germany, and UK, and recently we also have a site in Poland. And INX produces ink for mainly for packaging purposes, and I support the business in developing the sustainability strategy, in the data reporting, all aspects of sustainability. And my journey is relatively short compared to yours. I sort of transitioned into sustainability about 2.5 years, and my background's QEHS, so it's sort of a natural progression. I mean, I have to say it's been quite a steep learning curve, but incredibly interesting, and I'm really excited to be part of that journey.
Well, that'll be interesting when we start to discuss certain areas about how, if you're fairly, say, newish into that, what challenges that you've had.
Yes.
And I think one area which I think where we can start off is where we are now with sustainability. Because I mean, if you look at the world where we are at the moment, sustainability is under some challenges. We've got some big companies pulling back on sustainability, some people still moving forward. It was announced this week that Starbucks, the chief sustainability officer, they fired her, which was a bit of a shame. But they're embedding it in different parts of their business. So sustainability is going to be under some challenges in certain areas, and it's going to be accelerating in others. I think it'd be fascinating if we could just go through and sort of like say, where do you see sustainability at the moment? Where is it sort of like either under pressure, where it's accelerating, where some of the challenges are, and maybe some of where the opportunities are when we start to put it back to sort of like print service providers, and where they can look at sustainability and use sustainability about how they can win at sustainability, because that's really what we really need to do. So if we just go along, I think it'll be easier if we just do that, and then we can jump in. But feel free to have a free-flowing conversation as we go through. So how do you see the world of sustainability at the moment?
Well, I would say that there's been a lot of ambitions around sustainability in the last years. We're very much about setting ambitious targets, whether it's net zero, whether it's zero plastic, things like that. You've seen it, I think, globally. But I think we're at the turning point where there's less about the talking and a lot about implementing. And so I feel that at the moment we're in a space of how do we implement these big plans that we had, and it turns out sometimes more complex, no? Or sometimes, always. Maybe more complex than planned. And so really seeing this sustainability transformation more from a system angle, I would say.
And I would say that it's not only the doing, less talking and more doing, but the drive for this, it's also coming from regulation. So regulation is a big driver that is pushing sustainability agenda. And I think brands that are touching or printers that are touching bigger brands are more affected by this drive from brands that are asking them, okay, well, I want report, I want data, I want better solutions. So I think both regulations as well as the demand from brands are the ones that are the things that are accelerating.
I think that's a really good point, because unfortunately, if you're not a leader in sustainability, like some people are, regulation and the directives will pick up those companies that are behind, who are the sort of like the laggards, who will only really do it if they're pushed, you know. So we're seeing a lot of those being drawn in now, and those are actually quite the hard companies to deal with. But you're quite right, it's taking that information and putting that back. But I want to talk about information and data a little bit later, so hold that one on there. But you're right, Carlos, legislation is driving it through. Global brands and retailers are committed, and that will always flow through to the supply chain partners. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really optimistic about sustainability. I absolutely recognise there's a lot of challenges, and we see this day in, day out, regulations, compliance, meeting stakeholder requirements. But I also feel that, you know, people recognising how important it is, irrespective of what some politicians or what some companies are doing. I think the broader message is that it is still important, that it will help you add value to your business. It's a differentiator. If you're sort of proactive in managing it, it helps you to manage risk and mitigate risk, because, you know, there's a lot talked about risk management at the moment, and sustainability, you know, that's core to that, and sort of how we sort of evaluate it and how we can reduce the risk to businesses. But I also think we're now entering into an age where there's collaboration. People can understand the risks and how important it is, and that actually this journey needs that level of collaboration across every part of the value chain, and that people want to work together, share best practice, share what's worked well. So I feel really optimistic about where the industry is going and that sort of journey.
I think from when you look at it, and I look at your experience, and you are true experts when it comes to that. What I think would be interesting also to look at is you all work in different areas. So you're working in country, you're working in region, let's say in a continent, but you also have a global perspective. Are we seeing some countries who are accelerating? Are we seeing some countries that are pulling back maybe? Are some countries further forward than others? How are you finding that? Because obviously if you're a print service provider, a printer, and you're working on a regional or global basis, that must be quite difficult to be able to have one challenges in one country that's accelerating, and maybe another country which maybe might be pulling back a bit. So how are you finding that? Because obviously you're dealing with all of the you know, the big, you know, tenders and the big things. Are you finding that? Is it coming on a two-speed?
So I would say there's definitely some regional differences. There could be differences in pace of change, differences in regulations, obviously. So this is all a different context, let's say. But at the end of the day, for a business, the challenges are the same. So if you talk about carbon is relevant everywhere. Whichever is your sustainability topic, it's going to be the same everywhere. So I think it's more about considering the context and maybe adapting your project and your solution to each environment, but on the same topic.
See, I was making it really complicated, and you've made it really simple. There's me going, oh, it's really complicated. And actually what you've said is you actually make it quite simple. And you're right. It comes down to you're having to do it. It doesn't really what country you're in. You're just having to do it. And is that how you're feeling?
You need to do the superset, no? You need to comply with everything and then tailor your reporting, your information to the specific region. No? So I think this creates a challenge, because you cannot optimize for one region. You need to do the superset if you're a global company. Or if you're a regional company, maybe you can have less constraints.
Can we name and shame any countries that we think are behind the curve? See, I'd like to say the US and say, well, they're behind. I'm not going to go into any political things, but I was speaking to some clients the other day, and they actually said that they're doing more work with US companies that are being more proactive about sustainability than they are in Europe. And I was fascinated to hear that, because the US has been a little bit slow on the uptake, but they seem to be really coming fast. I'm not sure if you've experienced that at all.
I think, I mean, our head office is in the US, and we're still very much committed to sustainability. It's still at the core of our business, and it's still at the core of our overall strategy. And from my perspective, I don't see that people are pulling back, because irrespective of who's in charge in the US at the moment, I think people can see beyond that and actually can see that things will probably change again when, you know, somebody else comes,
Yes,
replaces Mr.
and in
Trump.
the US, the case is that also there's a lot of country state regulation,
Yes,
no?
yeah.
State regulation.
Yeah, California, for example.
it's really
For that they are
Yeah.
leading for years already, no? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
federal regulations are minimum.
Yeah.
So in reality, they've been leading in some states, and
Yeah,
as you say,
California is a really
California.
good
trend,
example.
everybody understands the trend. The talking, the political noise, it's the talking part. Maybe you need to talk less, but you still need to be.
Yeah.
So if we then take it from globally and let's land it in our world, because our world is printers, isn't it? It's print, it's substrates, it's materials, it's design, it's all the things we love about our industry. I was talking this morning, someone gave me a statistic from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that said 80% of the sustainability impact of any service or product is determined at the early design stage. And obviously part of our world is inks and materials. You know, that's where it all starts with the design and that. Can we just touch on a few things around those materials? And, you know, because we talk about sustainability, but sustainable materials is a really tricky, you know, conversation to have, which I wouldn't mind talking a bit more about. Is talk about those things in your experience and in your view about those materials, inks, and that you know that are going to ultimately end up, you know, in the consumer's hand.
Yes. So I think from our end, we can take a specific example of our transition from PVC to PVC-free in our banner products.
Yep.
That's one of our key objectives, is really transitioning away from PVC in this area. And as I was mentioning earlier, this kind of project are often more complex than you think they would be in the beginning. It's not a simple material substitution. It's not that. So we've taken really a more systemic approach, and we've surveyed hundreds of customers in multiple countries to ask them this simple question: what is it that you need? Because at the end of the day, you have assumptions on the existence of how things work, but you can challenge that and actually redesign a product portfolio around an updated knowledge.
Right.
And with that come also interesting learnings. So one example in with PVC-free banner is, I'm going to nerd out a little bit here.
Don't worry, you're in good company there.
PVC-free banners tend to be a little bit lighter in grammage and thinner. And so you could easily think...
I'm going to say that. I've been in this for years. I didn't quite know that. So I've learned something today.
Very good. They can be a little bit thinner, and you could think, oh, if they're thinner, then they're not as resistant, right?
Okay.
And if you look at technical data sheets of this material, you realize that their mechanical strength is higher. So their tensile strength and tear strength with the thinner grammage is higher. So I think it's also really interesting when you look at the sustainability projects, sustainability driven, challenge your assumptions and redesign an approach based on this new knowledge. And this was really an interesting learning for me. And yeah, so today we have launched PVC-free banners in 5 different businesses within Cimpress, 15 markets. There's still a lot of work to do, but I'm quite happy with the progresses so far. Yeah.
So obviously, when you introduce products like that, there's obviously going to have to be an education process, and marketing has to then get on board, because obviously there's, like you said, there might be a perception of, well, it feels lighter, so is that less quality?
Yes.
But so you've then got to translate that to say, no, the tensile strength the same, printability, end of life might be enhanced because it's not PVC. It might be easier at end of life. So yeah, so you've got those challenges. It might be new, but you still got some challenges.
That's right. And I think here is a lot about, and probably you have the same, where you have this new knowledge, but you need to share it, right?
Yeah.
You need a lot of customer education, and how are you going to do this in B2B versus B2C? There's a lot of interconnectedness.
I'm going to come back to cost now, because I'm fascinated, Carlos, with you to hear, because obviously when you look at HP, your heritage is not just a print and ink company. You've combined materials from the beginning. And so what journey is that taking you
So
on?
I think the point I was going to make is that collaboration is key, because it's not only what the printers do trying things, no, it's the whole ecosystem. The manufacturers of the materials need to collaborate and share these new materials and innovate in these new materials. We as printer manufacturer, ink manufacturers, we need to enable that these new materials work with the right level of quality, the right level of cost, durability for the printing companies to provide these companies these solutions at the right price. So this is our focus, is how to enable that these materials can be produced, and in that, both for latex, for indigo, for page white, we have media certification programs where we accelerate this testing for customers.
Yep.
So then we have a pre-selection of medias that we know they work, and we tune the systems to work with them. So it's a collaboration that we will talk about more.
Yeah, because that's important, because if you are a printer, regardless of what area you're specializing in, that's really important that you can relax in the knowledge that the materials are going to flow through, they're going to work every single time, and you've tried and you've tested them before. Because I've been to your experience center in Barcelona, and if anyone hasn't been, if you ever get a chance to go, because that is just a world of when it comes to printing, you see what you guys are doing, you're always testing new things there.
And first time never works, so it requires evolution. So it requires this collaboration, innovation,
perseverance.
to bring this perseverance. And this will come from customer demand, but sometimes it's from these leading companies that have the vision and say, okay, this is the way, and we will put the effort, because the effort of changing is, so the alternate needs to exist, need to be available, need to be cost effective, but there's an effort to change, and this effort, you need to be willing to put that effort.
And how have you found that?
I think you've also got to recognise that there is always going to be a trade-off and a compromise as well. And it's, we work in the world of packaging and sort of ink systems, and it's understanding what are the critical aspects of that product, what do you need it to do, and what is the compromise that you're willing to make. So a good example of that is food contact, low migration product. So there's been a lot of work on low migrating inks and sort of in the packaging world, but then that causes problems with recyclability. So it's understanding what is critical and what those compromises and the trade-offs are. I think businesses are reacting to that, and we're now looking at dual sort of solutions. So we've got low migrating inks with which are nitrocellulose free, which help with the recyclability. So industry is adapting to that and looking at where what is critical and sort of trying to build solutions around that going forward. But it is recognising that it is difficult, and there has to be a degree of trade-off at the moment and a degree of compromise until we can be innovative to remove all of those challenges.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? You've got this balance of functionality, and you've got cost elements, and then you've got sustainability,
recyclability,
and recyclability, end of life. We were talking earlier about before about circularity, and people going, yeah, it's a circular product, and it's like, well, what do you mean by circularity? So I think the industry's having to catch up, the industry's having to learn, and we can talk about the Sustainable Print Manifesto in a minute, but I think that learning journey, everyone's at different paths, and I think we've been in it, who've tried to lead it. It's been difficult to try and educate, because everyone is at different things. I know we're trying to do that as well, but it's interesting what you're saying about the compromises you have to make.
Yeah, and I think it's also understanding that people at different parts of the value chain have got different priorities as well, isn't it? And that it's difficult to balance that. A printer has got a different priority than somebody who's working in the waste management, looking at recycling the product. And it's how do you then balance that and try and make sure that you've got as sustainable a product as you possibly can, not just looking at one aspect. And that's where the compromise and the balance comes out.
Yeah.
It's a compromise, and sometimes re-evaluating the assumptions, no?
Yes.
This has always been like this.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we don't need this level of color or things. No?
Yeah.
So re-evaluating the assumptions give us more solution space.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's funny, because when you look at materials, and then we do lots of things to them, don't we? We put inks on them, we laminate them, we put all different forms of embellishments on them and things like that. And it's when you look at a consumer, the end consumer just wants something that's engaging, and we live in this wonderful visual world of print, but we do all these wonderful things to them, and then what you quite rightly said is then a recycler gets hold of them and goes, oh, I can't recycle that.
Yeah.
And you think of all the hard work that's gone into it, So that's, I like what you said there and what you said about that whole collaborative process that takes you back to the beginning that says, yeah, there are ways to do this. You understand it and we can help people navigate it. So when they get to the end, they've got the best product that looks incredible. And yeah, it can be recycled, not just.
Exactly, because we don't want to trade off and do products that are not perfect. No, we want to do perfect products. We believe the print has a value that it delivers value to the society, and we want to deliver this value.
Yeah.
Of course, we need to innovate and collaborate to make it more sustainable.
I mean, how many times have we heard that print was dead? How many years have we been saying that? And it's just growing and growing and growing, and it's turning into totally different areas. And sustainability has just added a nuance across all of the different areas of that as well. But if we then sort of like take a look at, if we've gone through those first couple of steps of looking at the global perspective, then drilling down into designing that, we then sort of have to then look at sort of like the data and the metrics and those sorts of things. I'll be fascinated to get your sort of like your view on where that starts, where it happens, what you're working on. We were speaking before we came on the podcast about, you know, the important areas. I'll be fascinated to hear a little bit more about, you know, your perspective on that. How does that work with you guys about data and LCAs and collecting that sort of information?
Yeah, so I think data is really critical to decide which sustainability solution is going to be viable and assess its success also, right? So in very simple terms, you have data everywhere, and it doesn't have to be, so to say, fancy data, right? So it's customer behavior, material specification, production, feedback, operations. And I think what's key is to how you can combine and cross all this information and all these data points and really inform your decision,
Right.
and adjust your strategy based on real information that you gather along the way. And once you implement that, obviously measure. And it sounds obvious, but let's say if you look at the success of a PVC-free banner, you're going to check the take rate, all right? But you have different ways of looking at this. You can look at take rate per square meter, per revenue, per number of orders, and that all gives you slightly different insights. And you can adjust, again, your next steps accordingly. So I think being very data-driven is key for sustainability to be successful.
Are you using any AI to look at that at the moment? I came from another podcast session where everyone was talking about sustainability in AI and AI being used in lots of different ways. And, you know, if it's not being used in our sector at the moment, it's definitely coming. So it'd be interesting once we start to look at those data points and how we can start to use them. Because like you said, there's a lot of data out there. It's how we use it. So how are you finding that sort of side of that collective side, information, how we use it, how we collect the data and how we then project it back?
Oh, I mean, they say what you don't measure, you're not sort of controlling, don't you? That's the old adage. And there's a lot of regulations. If they're not in place now, they are coming in terms of metrics and what you need to report on in the world of sustainability. So it's absolutely essential, and a lot of investors and stakeholders, they need to see that data as well, because it gives them a level of confidence that actually you're on this journey, that you understand where you're up to, you understand the challenges within the business as well, and where the sort of where the challenges are, where the risks are to the business as well, so that you can start to manage those and sort of mitigate them. And I think it can be a little overwhelming as well for industry and for any business starting out, when you start looking at, you know, the data points and what you need to report on. But I would always sort of say start off small. Greenhouse gases, for example, that's the metric that everybody sort of reports on. And, you know, gathering your scope 1 and 2 data as a starting point, then starting to work on scope 3. And then product carbon footprints are particularly important to our stakeholders.
I'll jump back on that. I want to ask a particular question about that after we've spoken to Carlos about that. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's essential, and you know, and part of your reporting, and to give people that confidence that actually you know where you're at, you know what the challenges are, and that you're managing them, and that you're sort of moving forward on that journey.
Yeah, and I think companies have started to accelerate on sustainability data, because regulations have been focusing a lot on reporting and disclosure. But I think upcoming regulations are getting more into the details about now the data needs to inform the decisions. Yes. They need to drive the strategy. And when we start to measure, and I agree, you need to first measure to do change. First thing that we discover is the data that we have, it's a little bit it's not perfect, so it's scattered amongst many different systems. There are duplications, errors, so there's a lot of effort that we need to put on curating the data. And then in our case, and in other companies as well, is that in a lot of these data, it's not within your systems, it's in your suppliers, it's in your customers, that maybe you are more advanced and then the rest don't know what you are talking about. No? So then this generates complexity because you need to collaborate, again, coming back to collaboration, to inform yourself.
Because it is complex, and I know anyone listening here is we can go really deep into this and talk about different levels of data, but if we just step back a minute and just go, oh look, where do people even start here? Because we know that there are some bigger print companies who have been on journey for many years. They've got, even might have a sustainability team in their business, but there are lots of companies who don't really even know where to start with it, and sometimes it can be really daunting because it's like, well, where do I start? And so one thing I wouldn't mind having a look at, and it can flow through to, because I know I want to talk about collaboration and some other things in a moment, but I want to sort of like have a little talk about the Sustainable Print Manifesto, because why was it started? What was the background? Why did it come about? Because I think it's important that we can say to people, well, look, wherever you are on that journey, don't be frightened, because some people will go, I can't do it, so I'm not going to start, or I might just do a little bit. Tell us a little bit, Carlos, because you've been a real pioneer, a real leading force in creating a manifesto for sustainable print.
Yeah, the realization of the need of collaboration came when again we started measuring, and I always call these low resolution numbers. So even if you don't have all the numbers, let's get some numbers, which it helps take decision. And realizing that a lot of the numbers were outside, and I needed to share with the printers, to the material manufacturers, to the inks. So we need to collaborate to get the full picture. And once we have the full picture, and then we need to improve, then what we realize is that it's not only ourselves. We need to improve what we do, but also what our suppliers do, what our customers do. So it's not only being able to understand and where to focus and innovate, but also to really take action. We need to collaborate. And this was the need. And when checking with other peers from the value chain of print, the need was confirmed. So this need was perceived. And then we decided to get together and align and say, okay, how we would define a best way or a better way of producing print. And this is where the manifesto was born.
So at that point, you got I'm just going to say it because obviously there might be people who don't know about it. So you got a bunch of people together who we got some founders in there,
exactly.
Small to big, medium-sized business, some big companies as well. So
more than 40 companies came together, and we came to an agreement of what are the 9 principles for making print more sustainable. It took us 1 year and a lot of meetings and a lot of reviews, but in the end we came to the realization that we even in some cases we are competing technologies. There are some fundamentals that we agree, no? And these are the fundamentals that we should start with. This is the agreement. This is how print can be made more sustainable. Let's start from this anchor point.
Yeah, and I looked in it at the beginning. I was very fortunate. I was invited to be in that beginning pieces. It's always difficult to start something new. And the thing is, when you're starting off with a blank page, everyone always goes, well, this is easy because it's a blank page. But actually, it's not easy because it's a very complex world. And you quite rightly said, from materials and inks and, all those different things and so how are you finding that with, the customer's journey? Because we were saying before, is they need structure, they need help, we can help them. And that's the whole idea of the manifesto. So how do we then try and accelerate that with them,
I think what we found is, we're speaking a lot more to customers and suppliers as well, because obviously we rely on them to support us in our data collection, in our calculations. But I think the nice thing about the world of sustainability is that there is that real drive to collaborate, to be more transparent. If you don't know, previously you would try not to sort of say to a customer, well, I don't know, or I haven't done this. Whereas now, actually, in the world of sustainability, it's all right to recognize that you don't know, or that you're starting off, or that these are the gaps. And then the customer will generally support you on that journey. And it is very much a collaboration, because it's in their interest that you're on this journey and that they can support you to get to where you need to. Largely, I've never come across a customer who's not willing to support, to meet you, to offer guidance. And it isn't looked at, it's not frowned upon anymore. It's not seen as a weakness. If anything, it's actually seen as a strength.
I was going to say that. I actually think it's quite a brave thing to just stand there and just go, "Look, I don't know, but I will find out for you. You know, or I'll bring experts in to answer the question.
Or even, this is what I'm going to do. Can we meet again to discuss that? And is that to see if that's in alignment with what your expectations are? You know, we were talking about product carbon footprints. That's a perfect example. You know, whilst there are standards around calculation of product carbon footprints, anybody who's done a PCF calculation knows that there are so many
assumptions,
intricacies. You know,
some are verified, some aren't verified, some are externally, some aren't.
And this is where a customer can really support and help you, and suppliers as well, such as to make sure that actually it's aligned with what their expectations are, or sharing best practice, or what they've learned when they've been through that journey. And I think, you know, like you said, it's a real strength to go to them and say, actually, I want to talk to you about this. This is what we're doing. Is this right? You know, does this meet your expectations?
Yes, and I would add on this as well, that especially when we look at sustainability in this industry and in many, there's interdependence. We're an ecosystem. And so if I want something, then I probably need you, big you. And for that, I think it's critical to, I'll bring it again to the PVC-free banner example, just because I think it lends it a bit. In what we've done in the past is a tender on PVC-free banners, and what we enabled with that is across our businesses, we aligned our specifications, so we aligned the demand, and we showed a strong market signal. And I think through the print manifesto, and there is this thing of let's align what we believe sustainability is, and to some extent, hopefully, new specifications, and create the market demand that enables material innovation and that enables suppliers investing in new things, because they need to understand that there's going to be a benefit in this investment. And as you mentioned, I really think the sharing of information is really also about sharing feedbacks, like this is good enough, this is not good enough. Your PCF should be third-party approved, for example. And education, because there's like things that suppliers know, that customers know, that we don't, and that really feeds each other. So I think these initiatives are very important because they bring this alignment and this level of collaboration that allows everyone to advance.
Yeah, and for me is you know, we all speak to those clients who and customers or print service providers who just will look at you with a glazed look and just go, I don't even know where to even start. Or if they do know where to start, there's so many different choices. I mean, even if you go back 5 years and then where you look where you are now, sustainability has changed dramatically. We've got materials now that we never had 5 years ago. You were saying, I mean, the market's moved away from materials like PVC. You know, it always interests me when I speak to brands and retailers, when I say to them, why are you moving away from PVC? Most of them don't know why, they've just been told to, you know. But there are benefits why about recyclabilities, and I'm sure as experts you can tell me even more about that. But so those are the challenges, and I think the manifesto gives printers a structure. They've got the 9 principles, they know where to start, and they can just follow them. And even if they're more further advanced, they can just turbocharge them. They can just up them even more. So how do you think those printers will use the manifesto? Because obviously you've been such a founding partner of it.
Yeah, I think a document by itself, it doesn't change anything. So the document, it's good, but what is important is that it serves as an alignment, no? So really that the industry gets aligned. And this is what we want to do together, no? And this creates this volume, no? Everybody asking for the same thing, no? It's accelerating, that then will drive change, no? So I think that the purpose, it's not the document itself, but the impact that it generates. And we've been always, the working group has always been very, very vocal in if we want action out of this. It's not just a declaration. We really want this to be a frame, a tool that makes change.
And what I love about it is it's a live document, and so people are feeding into it, and it's not just going to be, we are going to have a version, 1.0, but we'll always work on it because there'll always be challenges, and we're always going to have to look at what's the next challenge. Because one thing that I always take heart with is now I look at things that I was talking about 5 years ago and saying that it was really important are now just normal. And now I'm discovering things. I discovered a product last week which I'd never seen before, and I was like, even 5 years ago it was unheard of. So I think we're going to be finding more and more of those, and I know the industry has got some big challenges, that we'd like to sort of solve and we would like to look at. I'd like to sort of like unpack a few of those big challenges, maybe of what you're looking at in the world, or what you're looking at, or maybe there are challenges that you would like to solve but maybe you can't, and maybe you need collaboration. Is there any big challenges that you're either looking at or working on, or you like to solve?
Yeah, I think it is sort of balancing everybody's requirements within the value chain. That's our biggest challenge.
Right.
So it's almost like you can sort of resolve one issue, but then the knock-on impact is that you create an additional problem elsewhere. And I think what we are moving towards now as a business, and I'm sure it's happening throughout the industry, is that people are starting to look at, talk to everybody in that value chain so that they can understand what's important to you. How can we help that? What's the best solution across the whole of the value chain, rather than looking at one problem in isolation? You looking across the board and understanding the complexities of that.
And I think there's the big challenge of the materials, and this is the material innovation, and this is where we are seeing emerging materials that are driven by the demand. So this will continue happening. I think the other big challenge is the waste. The waste that happens in the production, because there's an excess production, and this happens in all the supply chains and in packaging or marketing collateral applications. There's a lot of waste, and also the end of life of these prints. So I think these are the challenges on how to make more efficient, and the most efficient is the concept of print on demand. You print on demand, you just produce what you need.
There you go.
This is one extreme of how to make it super efficient, but then the end of life. I think this is the big gap that it's horizontal. It touches the materials, how we produce and how we recycle it.
Yeah. And challenge those big challenges that you're seeing?
No, that reflects definitely. So we've had a go at some point at trying thinking to bring all our plastic products to be recyclable, not just theoretically but in practice, and that's extremely hard, simply because the current, again, nerding in a bit, but
you want to get into waste and waste materials, let's go for it, because it's a big part of the industry, and I think it's one part of the industry that maybe isn't looked at, so please nerd out.
The recycling infrastructure today globally is really designed for packaging. So your milk bottle, your water bottle, your typical FMCG items. Our products, they don't fit in that. You have paper products, they're doing quite okay. And the thing is, if we were to want to make our products really recyclable, the plastic-based one, we would need to have big reverse logistics, collaborations for actual closed-loop recycling would be ideal. And this is never something you can really do in isolation. So we're not there yet, but I think that's definitely one big challenge for the future.
Because unfortunately, that's the challenge we face in our industry. We've got complex materials, we've got fibers, we've got plastics, we've got composite materials, we've got different layers, we've got metals if they're printed onto cans and things like that as well. So we live in a very complex material world, and I totally agree with what you said there is recycling unfortunately needs to catch up, and we know that some countries are further forward than others, and I think that's been a fascinating end to that section there. So what I'd like to do really now is just for the last sort of like 5 minutes is just to really have a focus on what is the future. I know it's very hard for us to predict the future because there's so many things going on in the world at the moment that I don't even think we can predict what's going to happen tomorrow in some countries. But if we look to how can we anticipate what are the differentiators going to be moving forward, and how can we sort of like adapt in print to survive, become, still be relevant? How do you see the future and the future in print? Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's go for it.
I have an optimistic view. So this is for starters. So yes, I see a bright future for print. A future where print is sustainable or more sustainable while delivering the value. And this means that companies will need to be transformed. So there will not be print that is not sustainable. So there will be a transformation. The innovators will lead, but the rest will be drawn into that. The future sustainability will not be a differentiator. It will be like quality today. It's a basic.
Just the new normal.
So also what I see is that sustainability as a differentiation, it has a limited time horizon. In the next 5 years, you can differentiate. But then in 5 years or 10 years time,
just evolves.
It will be business as usual.
Okay.
So the leaders will thrive in the short term, but in the long term, I'm optimistic. Everything we will still be delivering the value of print, but we will have a print that is more sustainable, that can be recycled at the end, is coming from renewable materials.
So a great optimistic from Carlos.
Yeah,
I'm very optimistic.
I think you have to be optimistic to work in sustainability. Let's be brutally honest. You've got to have an optimistic disposition, don't you? And I absolutely align with you. I think, there will be greater collaboration. I think people will start to design in sustainability into the product rather than it being an afterthought.
Yes.
And sometimes and sometimes then realizing that you've got a problem at the part way through the value chain or at the end of it when you can't recycle the product. So I do think there's more sort of collaboration with sort of designers, brand owners and things like that, looking at how can they improve that value chain, what compromises can be made and how can we deliver a more sustainable product. And I do think that it is already evolving towards that. I think regulation is obviously going to increase. So as a business, we have to be ready for that. We can see, PPWR is strengthening over the next few years, isn't it?
That's going to kick in August.
It is. But then when you look at the roadmap as well, it takes you to 2030. There's a lot of work that you need to do. And this is where the collaboration can really come into effect, can't it? And supporting you as a business on that journey and ensuring that you're able to meet those requirements. And it will go beyond we can see that the packaging is a huge topic. And legislation will continue to evolve.
So another optimistic view of sustainability in the next few years.
And I like the concept of it being embedded. It's not a sustainability department. No, it's the business. The whole business. It has sustainability embedded.
No, for sure. And I think I'm totally agree with what you said. And I would add that I think it's a good time to have this kind of voluntary goals in a business and say, okay, let's see a little bit what the future holds. We know there's going to be a bit more regulation. We know sustainability will become the norm. It's the right time to have voluntary goals that you embed in your operation. So whether it is because it's linked to your procurement strategy, because it's linked to your product design, like now is the time to do that, I'd say.
Well, that's fantastic. So, look, that's been a fantastic session. So just to wrap up there is we started off looking at the global, sort of like the view, the pressures and how those regulations are going to really push sustainability forward and sort of like take them on the journey. The print manifesto, fantastic work you've done there to give, printers around the world that absolute structure. And then the collaboration is a big thing. You've got to collaborate to win. That's I think what we're going to see there. And then finally, sustainability within print is there. It's going to be embedded, and I think we're going to win. People can win business in print using sustainability as a driver. So I appreciate it. That's been a fantastic session, and I'm sure if there's any more information, if anyone wants to contact us in the future, they can do. So thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.